Welcome to episode 12 of the Beyond the Guitar podcast, where we help you play the music you love and we talk all things guitar and beyond. I'm Nathan Mills, joined by my co-host Jeremiah Diaz. And yesterday I was on a coaching call. Sometimes I have the opportunity to coach people who are starting out their music and YouTube specifically careers. And people will reach out to me and schedule a session to kind of talk through how I've structured my career and what steps I took to get to where I am. And it's always a really fun opportunity for me for a number of reasons. But I wanted to talk about that today. Jeremiah and I were talking about things we could cover for this week's episode, and that coaching call yesterday kind of made me think that the topic we wanted to cover today is if I had to start over. Let's say, somebody hacked all my channels, which it's like terrifying for me to even say that out loud. But if somebody was to, hack all my channels and every social media platform that I had any presence on just got deleted and I had to start over from scratch, I had to start my music and YouTube career from scratch today, in 2020, what would I do and how would I do it?
It's going to be interesting to hear what you have to say, Nathan, because I'm pretty much starting from scratch. So I'm interested in this conversation. For me, obviously I have a day job, so that's it's not like I'm financially reliant on starting a music career or anything like that. But it would be awesome to, at the very least, have like a decent amount of income from like music or this type of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what you say.
Well, yeah. Well, and you and we're always brainstorming stuff that we can do together and that you can do to help grow your brand and your business. And it's something that I think would be interesting to hear or just to have this conversation, because we are kind of on two different ends of the spectrum, with you kind of starting out, and I've been doing this for a little while, but it's always something that's really fun for me to just geek out about and think about just different ideas with the climate today, and with so many resources and tools that we have with these various social media platforms. There really is so much opportunity now, and so it's always just fun to talk about. So if I had to start over, knowing what I know now after doing this for like 5 years, what would I do? So I want to start out with a few kind of mindset concepts, or just some conceptual, less tangible things that I've learned and that I've developed over the years that I would start right away with in going into a new career if I was building this from scratch. The first thing is I would be more consistent early on. When I first started, I was very sporadic when I would post videos and when I would make any type of posts on any social media platform. And I've finally gotten into a lot more of a rhythm. I'm not as strict on a very strict schedule as many people are still to this day. But for the most part, people can know what to expect with me. It's generally going to be 2 music videos a month. The instructional side of things, I'm still working on the the schedule for that. But this podcast every week, things like that. So that's one thing I would prioritize more early on, is being consistent, so that people know what to expect from you, right? They know what to expect. They know when to expect it. It's a really important part of growing, just building your brand and building that relationship with your audience. Because for one thing, it makes you look dependable, right? They know that you're not going anywhere, that you're not just going to disappear. They know what they're going to get every week or every other week. So it's a really important thing. And the example that people always give is like, imagining a TV show that never had a schedule, never announced when a new episode was going to show up, but it just randomly, 1 week it showed up on a Monday, and then they would miss a couple weeks, and then on a Wednesday, here's another episode. Like it just wouldn't work. So from early on, I would make that more of a priority.
I think that's a hard point for me because I'm not like doing covers, for example. So it's something that I've been trying to work on, like putting more content out more frequently. And thankfully, I have gotten a few songs out, since my first track, which was Beacon. I think like it was last year sometime, I don't even remember. But since then, I've been posting more frequently. And then I just finished mastering a song that I collaborated with my brother, and then my wife sings like very, very briefly as well. But that song I started like a year ago, and my brother wrote the guitar part, and I kind of built around that. But it's been so long, and it's just like, okay, we just need to get this done. So getting the ball rolling on being more consistent. Again, for original content, I don't know what that looks like as far as like people expecting you to put stuff out, but as long as I'm like posting stuff, regularly, like it would be awesome to like finish a song a month or something, just something like that, to be able to just post and release to people. But that's something I'm working on for sure.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm sure it is a whole different game when you are working on original compositions, and that kind of goes back to our productivity talk and the deadlines and the 80-20, and there's so many things that can help you navigate that. But and the challenge early on as well is usually we have less time for starting out because our attention is divided among many other things. Like if this isn't your main source of income, then, for example, like a day job is going to take up a lot of time, and you have to work on building this stuff on the side. And as you get more consistent, you learn how to kind of optimize your process, and that helps you become more consistent as well. So starting out, it really is hard to be consistent, but that's something that I would prioritize more early on. And like in your case, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be. If I was in your shoes, I would also be thinking about like, what else could I put out in the interim, in between full-blown releases, right? In between full songs. It could be some form of content, some smaller form of content, whether it's behind the scenes or things like that I would put out on Instagram, for example, on a regular basis, things like that. But some form of consistency, so you don't just disappear for, months at a time.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I need to get better about is social media. I mean, I've already stated multiple times that I don't have a Facebook account anymore. I just don't like Facebook.
Yeah, me neither.
I have Instagram. I know that Instagram's owned by Facebook, but I do have an Instagram account. But I rarely post stuff, and that's where I definitely need to get better, just to have a presence online and to get more eyes on my stuff. Yeah, one of the things that I have been trying to focus on is just getting songs out there so that when people do find me, I actually have like a legitimate amount of music for them to dig into.
Right.
Because part of the problems right now that I think I have is that if people do stumble upon my stuff, it's like, oh, he only has like one song or two songs.
Right. You don't have that backlog.
Right now it's 3.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but just having a social media presence is definitely something that I need to work on. Yeah.
So it's kind of along with that. So the consistency, but also I would make sure to be patient and not to put pressure on myself to expect overnight success, because that's one of the things starting out. I've seen so many people come and go since I've started making content. You see new people come in on the scene who hit the ground running hard, and they're putting out, a video a week on YouTube, and they're making original content on Instagram every day. And you look at these people and you're like, oh man, like maybe I should be doing that. Like, and you start to think about how, compare yourself. And then I've seen it so many times, in a month, 2 months, those people are gone. You never see from them again because they've burned themselves out. maybe they didn't achieve the amount of success in that short amount of time that they expected based on how hard they were hustling. And you just have to understand that things take time. Sustainable careers and sustainable growth takes time. And you have to be patient, and it's important to pace yourself in a way that allows you to be consistent without burning out, so that you can be here for the long haul. So I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself early on that if I didn't hit this milestone by this date, then I was a failure. And there was always this just pressure to grow and monetize. And it's a long game. And that's something that people really need to understand from the get-go.
Yeah, that's something that for myself, I'm kind of viewing it that way. And again, I have a day job, and I also have side work, like doing audio stuff as well. So I have a couple streams of income. One obviously is the huge chunk of my income. But yeah, what I'm hoping for at least my musical stuff, because it would be awesome for me to have like an actual business where I do audio work for like full time.
Yeah.
And then have like music be my side thing. Cause realistically, I don't envision that like musically I could make a living full time just from the style of music that I would want to make. But for myself, what I envision is that in the long term that I could have like kind of just constant revenue coming from music that I've made. And even if it's, just like a couple $100 a month or something, just something that's like, oh yeah, I make music and I make candy money on it, and I, spend it on whatever.
You spend $200 a month on candy?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Actually, not a big, I actually don't eat a lot of candy. Not a big sweets guy, although I do love ice cream.
Ice cream. Yeah.
I love me some ice cream.
I made we have some leftover like vanilla ice cream for some reason. We never like vanilla ice cream's fine, but it's vanilla. It's just boring. And
I love vanilla ice cream.
Do you like go and intentionally get vanilla ice cream?
Yeah, I do.
That's so weird.
It's just like the ultimate compliment. It's like Coca-Cola, right? It's like you have a hamburger and you got a Coca-Cola. And so it's like, you got apple pie and you got vanilla ice cream.
Okay, well, no, I will give you that. Yeah. But that's not just buying vanilla ice cream.
But even if you have like other flavors, if you got like a Rocky Road and vanilla, or like it's just like that like.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Staple. It's like it complements. Yeah. But I'm not just gonna get vanilla ice cream plain. So I was like, ooh, ice cream. What can we do that? And then I saw like we had Oreos in the pantry, so I made myself some homemade cookies and cream ice cream. It was pretty good.
How did we get on this? How did
you were talking about your candy money?
Oh, candy money. Oh, yeah.
Which I don't think is a real. I think we're gonna file that away with your wheel of cheese. I don't think that's a real saying.
Candy money. That's a real thing.
Really?
That one I didn't make up.
Weird.
Wheel of cheese I did, which I'm so proud of that one actually. But
well, good. Pat yourself on the back. And we can go into more of that later as well, or maybe even in another conversation. But diversifying, that's part of what I'm talking about in here, is that you can still make a career out of this without just the music you create being the entire piece of the pie. It's diversifying and having lots of different revenue streams to make one cohesive business is the best way to do it. So yeah, be patient. Don't burn yourself out. This is a big one for me. Starting right out the gate, I would create more and consume less. This is a trap that so many people fall into. And any new pursuit that I start, I will tend to fall into this still, where I feel like I want to learn, and I've got to have everything planned out perfectly, and then I'll start creating things. I would have started instructional content way earlier if I didn't fall into that trap. There's so many things that that I would have done sooner if I didn't get distracted by just consuming. And there's so many other things that come with that too, as far as like comparison. You get discouraged and things like that just because you're watching and consuming. And so I would consume less, and I would just focus on my own stuff, just creating, because that's what's going to build your business, is putting stuff out there, not how much you learn and consume and plan. And you can adjust as you go. And that's why with this podcast, for example, Jeremiah and I have talked about the fact that I didn't want to spend a significant amount of time looking at what other people do for podcasts, because I don't listen to a ton of podcasts regularly. I don't listen to any podcasts regularly. I have a few that I'll watch clips of or listen to clips of, but honestly, I never really listened to that many podcasts. And so it was something that I was coming into with kind of a clean slate. And I had that temptation where like, oh, well, I really should see what other people are doing and learn from them. But it kind of felt like an opportunity to come at something with no comparison. And I wanted to touch on this before as well. Talking about the podcast, Jeremiah and I were also very clear from the beginning about tying this back to the being patient. We said from the beginning, like, what was it, like 6 months? We're gonna just put our heads down, put out content week after week, and then we would reevaluate after 6 months on if there were any real fundamental changes we need to make in the podcast, if it wasn't working or things like that.
Yeah.
Because we know that things do take time, and just because we feel like 5 episodes in, 10 episodes in, if we felt like it wasn't reaching some certain milestone that we felt like it should, we know that that's still too soon to call it by. So yeah, I just wanted to tie that back into that as well. But creating more, consuming less, that has always been a pitfall for many people, myself certainly included.
Yeah, that's something that I've had to really work on. And my wife and I both actually have been focusing on that for the last maybe month or so. Basically, my wife and I talked, and basically my wife is really passionate about baking, and she's a really great baker. And she's been kind of
dangerous.
It is very dangerous. Luckily, she doesn't. Well, actually, she's baking way more now, which is bad for me. But before, she was mostly baking for other people, like for people's birthdays and stuff.
Yeah.
But she's baking a lot more now. And what we had this conversation about what it would take for both of us to kind of grow in our careers or just in our passion projects. And not like be stale or like not follow through with them. So for my wife, she wants to bake. Like she really wants to be a baker, whatever that looks like. Right now you can kind of call her like a homemaker or stay-at-home mom or whatever you want to call it. But we talked about how I'm not really passionate about the job that I currently do. All the stuff that I do for audio has to be after hours, and typically after our kids go to sleep. So she was just getting discouraged about not being able to really bake much. And we kind of had this conversation where I was like, I think maybe we need to view your baking the way that I view my audio stuff, where we just do it when the boys are sleeping. And that's just kind of when we get things done. And, it's kind of put a new shift on things. Cause that's usually when we would just sit on the couch and watch TV or whatever. And, like you mentioned, just consuming and not really being productive. And that can be an exhausting lifestyle. Like if you're just constantly needing to be productive, that's like, I'm not saying that that's what you need to do, but we've definitely been more intentional with the time that we have once our kids go to sleep.
Right.
And so even for myself, like I've been watching way less TV at night and focusing more on my music and stuff. And it's just been a good mindset to have. It's and most of the stuff we watch on TV is like trash anyway. I mean, There's like those certain shows that are like really, really good, and I'll definitely devote time to watch those. But for the most part, like it's usually like stuff that I don't even be watching anyway. So devoting time to being more disciplined about work. Oh, and one other thing that's been awesome as well, this whole working from home situation. I know probably a lot of people listening are working from home as well. And I'm able to take one of our boys down to my quote unquote office, which is my brother's apartment. I'm able to bring one of my older boys down who can kind of fend for himself as long as I get him set up with like a movie or toys or whatever. And he can be downstairs with me while I work. And my youngest can be napping while my wife is baking. So we've been also using our time creatively that way as well. Now that I'm working from home, we can be more flexible with how we do things.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. A little give and take.
Right.
And that's a good point, because that's a whole other side to consuming, because I was referring kind of to the that's the
right,
consuming that's in the disguise of right, or it's consuming that seems productive because it's learning how to build an email funnel and or learning about SEO on YouTube and how to make a nice looking thumbnail and things like that. But we get trapped in that. But then, yeah, like you're saying, then there's just the consuming that's purely recreational that can most certainly get in the way too, especially because I'm not of the mentality, I'm not the like hustle 24/7. You've got to be the hardest worker. You never sleep, never see your friends, never see your family if you want to win and have success, like the Gary Vaynerchuk philosophy. Right. Like I'm not about that. Like you do have to have that balance. But I do think that there are seasons, like where the season that you're in, where you do have the day job, you have a family, you have kids, you do have to make sacrifices in order to start building something. So yeah, I think you're doing it exactly right on that front. And that was something that in the earlier days I had to do more of as well, because I started this when I had a day job. I started this when I had a day job, and then I taught guitar lessons after work. And then basically it was after that I could try to do things. And then different opportunities came up and I had more time and slowly would have more time. But at first there was a little bit more sacrifice like that. So yeah, that's definitely a level of sacrifice is what it takes.
Yeah. Well, and for us, both my wife and I, we're crazy night owls. So, if we're going to stay up till like 1 a.m. anyway, we might as well, and we're going to be tired, like taking care of our kids or whatever. If we're going to be tired the next day anyway, because we stayed up late, it's like, well, I might as well have been doing something productive and something that I'm going to be proud of as well. I'm not just like working for work's sake. Like I actually enjoy this stuff, and my wife actually enjoys baking. So
yeah. And the reason I'm more okay with making those sacrifices, because I've most certainly had some very long nights working on stuff when I knew other people were just having a good time, hanging out. I pulled some all-nighters doing videos and things, like having to record when the kids are asleep. But the reason I'm more okay with that too is because there's something exciting about the potential of building something for yourself and building a business like this. Of course, there are no guarantees and it's always a risk, but I know that everything that I'm working toward, every piece of content that I put out there could potentially be helping me build this future for myself and my family that I really want, and that's going to give us the financial freedom and the time freedom that we can then reap the benefits of that work, where we can then have more time to be together and things like that, and build a career that I'm excited about. And so putting in some of those later nights for that purpose can actually be exciting when you think about it in that lens. And that helps. Thinking about the potential helps keep you pushing through.
Yeah, and that's where, like you were saying, you need to be careful with, be excited about the potential, but don't be disappointed with like slow results or slow starts.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Excited about the potential, but know that it might take a while. But that also doesn't mean then if it starts to take a while, then people start to dread the work because they feel like it's just wasting their time and they don't know if it's ever going to pay off.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, you hear so many stories about people who, there's a guy that I follow who actually, he's big in the streaming, like Twitch streaming, instructional world. His name's Harris Heller. And he streamed on Twitch for years before, for 10 viewers. And then he started making content around that and teaching people things related to streaming. And he started to blow up. But again, it was after years. It looked like overnight success for some people looking on the outside in. But from him, he had been working at this for years. And he recently posted an image of his YouTube analytics. And he put a little point on the graph and he said, "I almost quit right here." Because he gave himself 30 more days before he had to go get a different job. And little dot on the graph. And right after that dot, the graph just went straight up. And that's when his videos really started to take off. And so it was a really cool visual reminder that you don't know when something's really going to start picking up and you're going to hit that tipping point. And many times it's after you push through that moment where you feel like quitting the most.
Yeah.
So yeah, being patient is huge.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we've talked about this, but it makes me think of your videos and anything where you kind of have these ups and downs, but in my sage wise self, I always tell you, just don't worry about the numbers. Things will continue to go up as a trend, as a general trend, things will continue to go up. And in the meantime, you'll have things that are really popular that kind of give you that boost in numbers and monetization and all that stuff. And so, yeah, just the consistency aspect and not giving up too early is a good piece of advice. That's a cool story though.
Yeah. So to kind of recap, we're kind of bouncing back and forth between these points, but we've got, being more consistent early on, being patient, creating more, consuming less. And then this is one for me that I still struggle with. And starting over, I would have put more of an emphasis on this, building a stronger brand and a better connection with my audience by integrating my personality more into my content. I think that's a really valuable thing, that it gets people invested in you personally just as much, if not more, than your content. And that carries across platforms, that carries across over time. People are going to be more invested over time because they care about you as a person and they know you. And it's just a really valuable thing. It's the kind of thing that when you see platforms if YouTube just went under completely, the people that survive that are the people who have built this strong brand across various platforms where people will follow them anywhere just because they are so invested in them. And it's the kind of thing that it would make a difference, I believe, in my own YouTube channel, for example, if I post a video that's the content itself isn't as exciting for somebody. It might be a video game they've never played or a movie they've never watched. They'd be more likely to engage with it because it's me. And to an extent, just the quality of your work still plays a factor. I know a lot of people still watch things like that, that they might not be invested in because they know the quality of my work and they know that it's going to still be something that they like. But investing in showing your personality, and I don't know exactly what that would look like for me, because for music videos, if that's your primary form of content, that is hard, because you're just playing. And so you're just showing, I guess, yourself through your musical expression, but really being able to talk to your audience and engage with them. Lots of people will do little outro spiels where they'll talk at the end of the video, and that's where you get a glimpse of their personality, but that never felt I never hit a rhythm with that or felt good about that. Or I just felt like it was more of just a pitch to like, follow me here, 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 and here. It's not really personality. So finding a way to do that in a very genuine way is something I would take very seriously. And I think a lot of people do. They use platforms like Instagram. Maybe it's not their main content that they make. It's not their music videos, but they'll funnel people over to Instagram, and then they use Instagram as a way to show people their life and who they are. And that trickles back into YouTube.
Yeah, that's something I have a hard time with in general, is like, just, I'm a fairly private person. Like, just in general, I'm a fairly private person, like, especially with social media. Like, if I'm talking to you one-on-one, that's great. Like, I'll share all kinds of stuff with you, but I just don't really like sharing my life with people on social media. And so that's a big point that's like been kind of hard for me to navigate. And with this whole like Chomachi endeavor, like, how much am I going to share? How much am I not going to share? What do I want to share? And even for me personally, like, I like when artists are kind of an enigma. And I think of like a famous example is like Daft Punk, for example. Like, no one really knows who they are. They just wear robot masks and like they make music, and that's all it's about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you like, nowadays, starting out, social media is such a huge aspect of it, and like sharing, like you were mentioning, sharing your life, sharing your personality. And maybe part of it's like, I'm self-conscious, like maybe people won't like me or something. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, that's a real thing. No, that's real.
But yeah, in general, I have just like a hard time, like, sharing pictures of my wife, sharing pictures of my kids, like sharing stories of like, hey, I went to, the gym today or whatever. Gyms are closed, but, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want people knowing like all this stuff about me. Like, I'd rather people not know that. So that's definitely been a hard thing to navigate. But I think for myself, like with the music that I'm making, I definitely think there are other things I can be doing that don't give that kind of stuff away. Like, maybe take more artistic pictures, or, posts about music that I like, or post clips of me working on music, stuff like that I can do that don't kind of compromise my, weird, insecurities or values around like privacy and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think you have to do it in a way that's genuine. So like, if you'd have to investigate your real reasons behind what you were talking about, your need for privacy. And I would say if it's a value, then that's totally understandable. And you don't want to be compromise on that. A lot of people don't feel comfortable putting pictures of their kids on the internet, and it's a very reasonable thing. I would never argue that. Some people are more private, and that's fine. I think there's always a genuine way to do it that fits with your personality, because that's part of your personality if you are more private, but there's still ways that people can hear your voice and see kind of what you're into. And that's why I love this podcast, is it's a platform for us to be able to just talk, and for people to hear our thoughts and the way we think, and the way we just interact in a way that I can't offer anywhere else. And it's like little things, like we talked about ice cream. Like, somebody listening to this could be like, oh yeah, screw vanilla ice cream. Like, what?
Yeah, I've always wanted to keep that a secret. Now everybody knows.
Right. And so like people will relate to you on little things like that.
Billions of listeners. No,
that's right.
I like
that you're a sucker for vanilla ice cream. It's only the most boring people ever like vanilla ice cream. That's Jeremiah. No, I'm just kidding.
I get crap for liking vanilla a lot.
Yeah, but it's
so good.
But that's a good thing, because that's like, it's a polarizing thing. You want people to know those polarizing things about you, because it just makes you more real and more human. And so things like that, I mean, that's perfect. You got to embrace that. Embrace your plain old vanilla.
Yeah, I resent the fact that vanilla is a derogatory term.
Yeah, it's
like, would you rather have apple pie and chocolate ice cream, or apple pie and vanilla ice cream?
Oh yeah, 100% vanilla. I hate chocolate ice cream.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I like
apple pie and strawberry ice cream. I don't know.
Right.
Take your pick.
No, vanilla is a classic. Yeah. I'll give you that, but it's more of a condiment, is what I'm saying. We're gonna have to have a whole episode about vanilla ice cream and its merit. But yeah, it's like I like the taste of vanilla ice cream, but I'm not just gonna go out of my way to get vanilla ice cream.
I thought you were moving on, and then you came back to it.
We gotta get this straight.
Oh man.
All right, but I will move on. So, because I also want to get to some of these more practical things as well. So the last one of these more kind of conceptual things is that I would focus on building friendships in my niche and finding mentors. Early on, especially, I really didn't interact, even though I watched a lot of content more than I should have, like we talked about. I didn't really try to reach out to or interact with people and build relationships in my area. A lot of people, I will admit I'm guilty of this some. You see so much of this world where it's very opportunistic, where people will reach out to you or you'll reach out to people because of what you can get from them. And people, especially who have been around for long enough, can see that from a mile away. And so that was more on my radar at the beginning than anything. It was more of a networking kind of thing where it always stinks a little bit of that opportunistic motive. Yeah. Whereas if you're genuinely just engaging with people's content in a friendly and really well thought out way, and you're pursuing actual relationships with people, you'd be surprised at who you can end up developing friendships with or being mentored by when with people who you might otherwise think are out of your reach, based on their audience size or whatever, or their skill level. And so I felt very lonely, especially at the very beginning of all this, because I didn't really know anybody personally who was doing what I was doing. And so all of the struggles and the mind games that I was going through in the beginning, I kind of had to just wrestle with myself, or, have to just whine and complain to you about them. And you were my shoulder to cry on. So I appreciate that. But it's really helpful. It's really so helpful when you're in the trenches to be able to talk to people who are in the trenches with you or have gone through those things before and can encourage you and mentor you and take you under their wing. And that's something that I still need to do more of. I've made a lot more friendships with people who I see as my peers and my colleagues now. I still don't really have many mentor type figures, and that's something that I want to prioritize more. But early on, that is so important.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought really about it that way. But I definitely don't have very many connections out there in the music space. But like you're saying, it's hard to randomly reach out to people and not have it seem like, opportunistic or like I'm trying to take advantage of their following or whatever. But it has been very nice for me that that you're my friend. And that
it's solely opportunistic. It's what I can get out of you.
Yeah,
I'm just letting you know that right now.
No, well, I'm thinking the opposite, because like our for example, our little track, our podcast intro / outro track that we released. We have like 1,500 plays on Spotify or something like that. Which
4,000, dude.
Oh, is it 4,000? Oh, dude.
Yeah. Get with the times.
I haven't looked at the stats recently.
Nostalgium on Spotify, by the way. Go stream it. Go listen to it. Add it to your playlist.
I would not have anywhere near that many streams if it wasn't a collaboration with you. So, I've already got my foot in the door a couple places.
That's right. Well, that's more than I was expecting for an original too, because most people are just stream my covers and stuff like that. So yeah. No, it's, well, that's one reason why I love talking to people. Like when we talk about like what you could do to continue to grow your business, and that's why I love doing these like coaching calls like I was talking about that I had yesterday, because I didn't have somebody like that speaking into my life when I first started out, and I wanted that so bad. And so it's so cool for me to be able to, even in however small of a way, offer that to people whenever I can. I love it. So I want to move on now to the 5 main focuses that I would have starting over. And this is a lot more practical. What platforms I would focus on, what type, what content I would focus on. So for my 5 main focuses, I would focus on YouTube, and we'll dive into each one of these a little bit more. I would focus on Instagram. I would focus on live streaming. All right, that's number 3. I would focus on music streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music. And then finally, I would focus on instructional content and online courses. Now, that might seem like a lot, and depending on where you're starting from, and how limited time is, that might look different, but because you really can't do all of the things. And that's why I didn't mention Facebook, I didn't mention Twitter. Based on my experience, these are the things that I would focus on. So I mentioned instructional content, and I'll just start with that. That's something that I really wish that I would have started earlier. I really had the plans when I first started my YouTube channel to start producing instructional content at the same time, and I had a website set up for it. I had
with the Force theme instructional video that we've talked about before.
I have some terribly embarrassing tutorials. So I dabbled in it, but then I wimped out. I had a lack of vision for what I really wanted to do with it. A number of things, a lot of the consuming versus creating, definitely happened there. But now that I have dipped my toe into that world, I've seen the massive potential that I really wish I would have invested in that more starting out. One of the things, along with that, very practical things, is I would make sure that I start an email list from day one. Because an email list, we talk about like if YouTube shuts down, if all your following's on Instagram, if Instagram shuts down, whatever, if you have people's email address, you can still connect with them despite whatever happens with the platform, or despite what algorithm changes, and you can no longer really, that's what happened with me on Facebook. My Facebook is very, I'm just gonna say it's almost useless now. I mean, I barely reach any of my audience because they made a fundamental change to their algorithm that killed a lot of pages on Facebook. And thankfully that wasn't my, main focus. But that can happen when there are algorithm changes on these platforms that you don't own. But if you have somebody's email address, because email is not going away anytime soon, at least, then you have a way to connect with people regardless of algorithm. And that's a really powerful thing, not just for instructional content or trying to, sell courses or anything like that, but even some people build email lists just to email people out when they have a new video or when they release a new single or things like that. So an email list really is powerful. It's one of those things that seems outdated, but it really isn't. And every business coach out there, every online entrepreneur who's selling courses or anything like that will tell you to build an email list. It's like a universal thing. So I would definitely prioritize that from day one, and I would make instructional content and build some type of online course that I could sell from day one, because there is so much potential in not only being able to serve your audience in that way by teaching something, and that helps further build that connection and that trust, but we're just going to come out and say it, there's money to be made by doing that and providing a service in that way. The the sky really is the limit in that world. So I would really prioritize that. When we're talking about YouTube, despite its flaws, there's still no better video platform currently. I have a very much of a love-hate relationship with YouTube, but there's nowhere else to go if you're creating video content. It's still the place, and so I would focus on there. That's still where I would make music videos, and I would make instructional content there. We're talking about Instagram. I would prioritize Instagram. Starting over, I still want to prioritize Instagram more now than I do, because I think it has a great balance of discoverability, branding, and connecting with your audience. Like I was talking about, you have an opportunity to organically show people elements of your personality or of your brand that they might not be able to see in your music videos. So, and again, like I said, the discoverability part, you can really grow on Instagram because of the algorithm and the explore page and search and hashtags and people sharing. There are lots of avenues for growth there as well. So right now, I basically just chop up my content from YouTube and throw it over there. I'm not using Instagram the way that it's really should be used. But the way things work right now, it's like, I don't want to do all the things. So since I don't need Instagram in that way right now, I just haven't prioritized it. But if I was just starting out and needed more avenues for growth, that's definitely something I would go hard on. A big thing that I would emphasize as well, like I said, was live streaming. So that would either be, for me, that would either be Twitch or YouTube live. If I was to do it, I'd have to really investigate both more closely, or maybe do some testing on both. But the reason why I would prioritize live streaming, and this is kind of how I modeled my career a little bit in the beginning, is that it goes back to that connecting with your audience. There's really no better way to develop that really personal connection than live streaming, because it is so organic and it's so real. It's just like you and me sitting here talking. And so that's really huge. The other thing is, if you're in a position when you're starting out that you don't need to worry about the monetization, that's really the best option, because you don't want to focus so much on money when you're first starting out, for a number of reasons, but one of them being it distracts you, and you make a lot of decisions based solely on that rather than growth, and they don't always go hand in hand. And then number two, it can come across as very desperate when you're first starting out. But anyway, that aside, if you do need the revenue to start coming in, live streaming has a kind of a disproportionate potential for revenue compared to your audience size. So back when I was, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to mention, I keep thinking of your crew days, and how like there'd be days where you make like hundreds of dollars because people are tipping you like crazy for whatever reason. And,
exactly. Yeah. So it's, there's, when I was first starting out, he's talking about Crew, which was this live streaming app that no longer exists, but it was similar to Twitch, but it was just for music. So I would go on there and I would play music live. I would take requests. I would do, little fun challenges related to music. And it was just, I would just interact with and just talk with people that were in the chat room there, and develop this really cool relationship with these people. And I only usually would have like 20 to 30 people max in there. But like Jeremiah said, there were some nights where I would make a few $100s just for an hour or so of streaming. Because these platforms they kind of gamify, they make a game out of like tipping and things like that. And so they do motivate people to give you money in that way, but it's mainly still falls back to that personal interaction and that connection. And people get excited to tip you some money when they can have that real-time reaction right back, and you can thank them by name right there, rather than them even a Patreon, something like that, it's less personal.
Yeah.
I can send a personal message and thank people, but it's not the same as seeing my reaction. If you drop a big tip and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like there's this very cool, real, organic, human thing about it. And so that's always one of my recommendations for people is to consider live streaming. It's not easy. It's not something, it's something you have to be very intentional about. But there is a lot of potential there for connecting and for getting some of that early revenue as well.
Yeah, and it takes me back to well, another thing that took me back was your Nate's theme for Uncharted that came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
You used to play that all the time when you were live streaming on Crew, and so
Right.
when that came out, I had forgotten about it, and it came out. You put it on YouTube, and I listened to it, and I was like, why does this sound so familiar? Because I haven't played Uncharted. And I was like, oh, I remember this now. Nathan used to play this. You had made an arrangement just like a really long time ago, and you just never made a video out of it.
right. Yeah,
Dang, it's crazy.
yeah,
Brought
yeah.
all kinds of
I
memories
was
back.
sitting on that arrangement for a while. Yeah, I don't. Again, live streaming is one of those things too, where it's like I don't need to do it right now. So kind of like the Instagram thing, I don't need it, so I don't do it. But it is one of those things I do miss, and I have I have people that followed me back in those days, streaming on Crew who still, some of them listen to this podcast, are listening right now, and many of them I consider friends to this day because of the relationship that we were able to develop in that medium. So live streaming is a really powerful thing, and I mean, there's a reason why Twitch is such a massive platform. People love live streaming. So that's definitely something that I would prioritize, at least in the early days. And then moving on to the last focus again that I mentioned is the Spotify, the Apple Music, the music streaming and downloading platforms. That's something that I really didn't take seriously at first because I felt like there's no way I'm going to actually make any meaningful amount of money from this. What's the point? People can look me up on YouTube and listen. Why are they going to listen to me on Spotify as well? I don't know. I had a misconception for what the potential was there and what the interest in people was there. I started to get requests from people to asking me when my stuff was going to be on Spotify. And I guess I just didn't realize that many people listen to Spotify at the time. I mean, now maybe I'm a late adopter, but I mean, I love Spotify now, and that's where I consume my music now. But back then I just didn't take it seriously. And so I would be more intentional about that from the very beginning. Because it is, of course, if you're not getting tons and tons of streams, you are going to make minimal money from that. But there is a lot of potential, especially if you're intentional about it, because there are means of strategies like reaching out to curated playlists and pitching your music and pitching your music to the editorial, the official like Spotify playlists. There's a chance to get placed there. And there are ways to grow your Spotify and your Apple Music presence if you do it intentionally. And that's all passive income. Once you really get it going, I get a check from all my streams from Spotify and these other platforms every month, that other than the upfront work that it took to put everything on there and to, come up with the arrangements in the first place, but that was already done for the YouTube video. And now I just kind of put it up and, do some album art or whatever and put it on Spotify. And I get a check that I don't have to do any additional work for every month. And over the past couple of years, that check has gotten bigger and bigger gradually. Again, patience, nothing happened overnight, but it got to the point where I was like, oh, this is actually a meaningful part of my income. And so, but I started out just very I just threw stuff together in a compilation, didn't put any effort into the album art, didn't put any effort into understanding playlists and how all that worked. And so if you do it intentionally, you can even see more rewards from that.
That's something I'm definitely going to try, the whole playlist thing. I mean, I don't know if my songs if they're going to, fall into the right categories or whatever, but yeah, I'm definitely going to try that.
Well, of course. There's tons of lo-fi playlists and things like that. So yeah, there's always that potential.
So I was curious, because I know for a while you were just doing bulk like albums, and I noticed that for a couple you've been doing singles. Are you doing every single song that you put out? Are you putting them up now, or are you just selecting certain ones that you think will be popular?
Only because, so I'm being a little selective right now, just because I want to submit everything that I put up to be considered for an official playlist.
Okay.
And you basically have to future date it like about a month to be able to give them time to review it. Right. And so because of that, I basically have like 2 YouTube videos for every one single that I can release on Spotify. So I could catch up and just put some out there and not worry about maybe the ones that I felt like had less potential or something. I guess I could just put up and not worry about pitching them for editorial consideration. Right. And then I could catch up and just release them all. But yeah, because of that, I am a little bit behind since I started releasing singles.
What do you know like what percentage of tracks that you submit to playlists, like how many of them get accepted?
So far as editorial playlists, I've only been placed once.
Okay,
and it was the first time.
Thing?
No, so that's not an editorial playlist. So on Spotify, we'll just dive into this for a minute. On Spotify, there's really 2 main types of playlists. There's what's called editorial playlists, which is actual Spotify employees go through and listen to music and curate these playlists themselves. And because they are official Spotify playlists, they get large followings and they get promoted. And those are where you generally get the biggest spikes in traffic if you manage to get on there.
Gotcha.
But to get on those, it's either they just happen to discover your music randomly, which is very rare, or they have a system in place where you can, I mean, you know this, Jeremiah, but it's a system in place where you can submit your music for consideration before it's released. So you have a kind of a one chance for it to be considered. And so the first time I did it was with The Mandalorian, and it got put on a new classical releases playlist that was an official playlist from Spotify, but it was a weekly playlist, so they only leave things on there for a week and then they take it off.
Gotcha.
So that first week it like blew up and it was incredible, but then it got taken off. But at that point, then there's the other main playlist, which is just user curated playlists. So anybody can make a playlist on Spotify, and technically anybody can find that playlist unless they make it private. So a lot of people will make like an classical guitar covers playlist, and if you look up classical guitar covers on Spotify, you might discover that playlist and then you can follow it. And so a lot of these user created playlists end up getting large followings, and if they discover you and put you on their playlist, you get a lot of potential listens and streams from that. So
gotcha. And that's what happened with the Raise theme. Song.
Raise. Yeah, it got put on a big user created one called, I think it's like instrumental pop covers or something like that, which was just, some guy made this and it ended up having hundreds of thousands of followers. And so it really did well because of that. And I didn't do any, he just discovered it. So there's lots of room, not only for potentially making money from Spotify over time, but discoverability as well. There's algorithmic playlists. That's the other one that I didn't mention. Algorithmic playlists, which are Spotify playlists that are curated. That's the other thing, is I would probably look more into how the algorithm on Spotify works. But there's like a playlist called Discover Weekly, where based on the music you listen to every week, they'll curate a unique playlist for you to pitch new, music that you might not have heard before that's similar to your taste. And so you can, I've had some of my music get on those playlists for people. And so I've had people on my Discover Weekly playlist. When I listen through it and I look at that artist, I'm like, oh, I like that. And sometimes it's somebody who barely has any listens. So it's not like they're only pitching famous artists on these playlists.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So there's lots of potential there for sure.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely something I'm going to keep in mind for my own stuff, and then for Junko as well, the indie band that I'm a part of for future releases. Yeah,
they make it to where it really prioritizes, it kind of forces people to release singles instead of albums, because you can only submit one unreleased track for consideration. So like if you release an album, you can only choose one song from that album for them to consider for their editorial playlist.
Right.
But again, then you can look up these user curated playlists and, see if you can find the person who created it, because some of them will also have sites that are dedicated to music submissions where they'll look through and consider your song. So yeah, there's some people who barely have any following anywhere, but still like kill it on Spotify. So it's an interesting thing. So I would definitely, again, starting over, prioritize that from the get-go.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to try and get in on for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, to recap, unless you had any other points you wanted to make or any questions or anything, Jeremiah.
I think that was it for me.
Yeah. So to recap, just through the points, I would be more consistent early on, be patient, not expect overnight success, create more, consume less, build a stronger brand and better connection with my audience by showing more of my personality, building friendships in my niche and finding mentors. And then I would primarily focus on YouTube, Instagram, live streaming, Spotify, Apple Music, all that, and then creating instructional content and online courses that I could sell. So, I hope that was interesting for you listening. If you just kind of want to see the mindset of what goes into creating a career like this, or if you're personally interested in a career like this, I hope this was encouraging for you, and just know that there are many opportunities for you out there. You just have to go after them and start putting yourself out there and start creating meaningful, quality content. So feel free to leave us a comment if you're listening to this on YouTube, and let us know your thoughts and let us know any topics you would like us to cover in future episodes. If you want to learn how to make your own classical or fingerstyle guitar arrangements like I do, you can take my free training, Fretboard Freedom, where I teach you how to find and play chords anywhere on the fretboard. It's a great way to get started dipping your toes into the arranging world. And that's on my website, beyondtheguitar.com. Again, completely free. And you can find my music videos on YouTube at Beyond the Guitar. And you can follow me on Instagram and all other social media platforms at Beyond the Guitar. Jeremiah, where can everybody find you?
You can just look up Chomachi. That's CHOMACHI. I'll be releasing a new track hopefully in the next few weeks. It just depends on the whole Spotify submission thing. I gotta figure that out since I haven't done that before. So that's a collaboration between myself and my brother, who actually goes by Spike Diaz. You can actually find him on Instagram as well. He plays guitar and like takes photography or does photography. Like he has a bunch of beach pictures and stuff. Anyway, so that'll be coming out hopefully in the next few weeks. And then you can also look up my indie band where I play drums called Junko, Junco. You can look us up online, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. Much love, and we'll see you in the next one.